Welcome in to another edition of Not Committed. I'm your host, Zach Berry. Joining me, Mr. Cody Bellaire on 3. If you're catching us on YouTube, you can see his beautiful face right there. The lettuce is in full effect. We've got
correct.
We've got UTEP swag everywhere. We love it.
Yeah, man.
We're here to talk recruiting. Obviously, a little bit of an instant reaction podcast here. As 4-star wide receiver Noreel White committed to Ole Miss about 40 minutes ago. We're going to get into that. Look, I'll say this, Cody, before we get going. Noreel White, talented dude. I know you're a big fan. I'm a big fan. Obviously, Ole Miss is a big fan. Look, it may not be the worst thing for Norell to, possibly think about looking into, maybe looking into some life insurance before he gets to the NFL.
That would be smart.
If he's looking to do that, if you want some cutting your premiums by about 20 to 30%, Norell and everybody else, you could call Drew Moak of USA Benefits Group at 601-953-8449. Drew can help Norell. He can help everybody else in the state of Mississippi and 6 other states as he is licensed for that. He works with the nation's second largest health insurance brokerage with access to 35 different carriers, and he can help you with any of your health insurance needs. So that's ranging from regular health plans to life insurance to dental and vision, even Medicare. He's got it all covered. So now more than ever, it's critical to have that taken care of. So if you need a health insurance agent who is local and accessible, give Drew a call. That is 601-953-8449, and you can get your free quote today. Cody, with that, welcome into the show. How we doing?
Dude, did you say 35 carriers? I mean,
yeah.
You can't beat that. I feel like you can't beat that. That's great.
Can't beat it with a stick.
Nah, dude, I'm good, man. Just getting rolling this morning. It's Happy Friday, so we're really excited over here in my neck of the woods.
Let's get into Noreel White. This one, long overdue. Ole Miss fans been waiting a good bit for this one. Surprised everyone in the spring with a commitment to Arkansas. Ole Miss never stopped recruiting him, and it pays off today, Friday, as we were recording this. He told Chad Simmons, quote, "They showed me I was important to them and how much they care for us in-state guys. Ole Miss made me feel like I can stay home and be one of the best receivers in the program." I think that's big because of, and I'll throw it to you because I know you've got some high quality scouting and breakdown stuff here for us. But yeah, I mean, I think he is a very intriguing prospect because I think he can do a little bit of everything. And you've seen him live. I've seen him live. He's a special dude. And I think he fits perfectly for what Lane Kiffin really likes to do offensively.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, to me, and you hit it on the head there. He's a great get. First off, he's a great get at 6 foot, 185 pounds. Ran in the 4.5s this summer, jumped to 33-inch vertical, 4.4 shuttle, and that's plenty good for us on our end. He also ran an 11.5 in the 100 this spring track season, so that cross checks with the 40 time, right? Like those match up. That's good. But to your point, dude, I think Ole Miss is getting someone at the receiver position that they don't exactly have in this current 2024 receiver crop. Right, you have bigger body guys like Jeremy Scott, San Francisco McGee, and you have an actual burner in the slot or Z at Rajee Dennis, right? So Noreel, in my opinion, brings a safety net to this group. This is someone who's a crafty route runner that has excellent ball skills that also possesses some tremendous yak ability. He's able to make defenders miss with the ball in his hands. He's someone that I think will become the guy that you look around and you say, hey guys, we need a big first down here. Who are we going to? Or, hey guys, we're in the red zone. We need somebody to get open. He's someone that I think Ole Miss fans will hear his name over the loudspeakers very often in Vaught Hemingway, simply due to the volume of catches he's going to have at the next level. I think he's someone that is going to be a safety net in this receiver class.
Yeah, seeing him live and not the biggest guy, but still 6'1" is plenty big for what they're going to ask him to do. It's
Agreed.
cliche, I know, but come on, this is a recruiting podcast. We're going to operate with cliches and in certain phrases, but he plays bigger than he is. Like in one-on-one situations, you said he jumped 33. I mean, he can really get up in strong hands for a guy that's not, you associate, big physical, strong hands with the 6'3", 6'4", 200 guys.
Yep.
Really, really confident in just plucking balls out of the air. And yeah, the short space quickness to me is where he's going to thrive. I think Kiffin is going to put him in the slot, and he's just going to make people's lives miserable over the middle. And then, yeah, I mean, you brought it up. That's a great point with the red zone. Hey, just put him matched up with one guy, your guy on our best, and make him miss and get open. I think he can do that. He's asked to do just about everything at St. Martin down in Ocean Springs. He plays quarterback, running back, receiver, returns kicks. He might even kick. Suntarian Perkins did that for Raleigh last year. Norrell might kick. I'd have to ask him, but yeah,
Just add it to the skill set, baby. Just add it. Just keep
just
throwing it in there.
put it on the CV. Yeah, I think he is a really great compliment, like you said, to the other receivers they have already. Raji Dennis is a guy that hey, I need you to take the top off the defense here. No problem. Dude's a track guy, can easily do that. And then you've got the two big guys in Jeremy Scott and San Francisco McGee. But yeah, I think Kiffin loves to expose matchup nightmares. And I think that Noreel White's the guy to do that in the slot.
Yeah,
As
dude,
far as
to me, the thing that I think we, as people watching and, the things that you always see and us as fans or people at home, right? When you turn on the game on a Saturday,
Mhm.
you in your brain, you kind of have all these things going on, whatever. The things that we don't see, and I think the thing that Noreel White can become for this Ole Miss team is the quarterback's best friend, right? There's value to being someone that, when the fire's going and there's a ton of traffic going on, I think the thing that we underestimate is, these quarterbacks are humans too. So when they drop back and they see things are getting crazy and it's traffic, they're going to think, who can I trust to catch this ball? Who do I need to look for when there's a defender and I feel pressure, right? I need to. They're scanning the field. They have someone in their brain that they want to find to throw the football to, and I think Noreel White is that guy. That's why I emphasize safety net. He's the person that I think ultimately you would trust the most in this 24 cycle to throw the ball to and expect them to come down with it.
Yeah, it's easy. The most recent comp at Ole Miss, specifically Elijah Moore. I think there's a lot of similarities there. Norell's a
Sure.
little bit bigger than Elijah Moore,
Mm-hmm.
height wise. But yeah, I mean, I think Elijah Moore was very deceivingly thick.
Yeah.
He was built well. He handled the physicality of the SEC much better than I think people expected him to. Norell
Sure.
is similar to that, probably walks around 180, 185, but a very physical guy. He's built well. And I think, to me, when I saw him at the Elite 11 regional, the thing that stood out to me, the route running was pretty crisp.
100%.
This, scouting thousands of prospects. Typically, these guys are the best guy on the field. And typically, unless you're looking at a juggernaut program in Georgia or Texas or Florida where they've got multiple Power 5 dudes, you're the best player on your team. And it's just, hey, we're just getting you the ball however we can. So for that, it's typically, well, I'm just going to out talent you and just get open. But he
Right.
runs good routes. And then to me, I keep coming back to the hands. I mean, just it's not body catches. He's using his hands to catch the football and get upfield. And you mentioned it, the yak, I think is where he's going to be a nightmare. Maybe a little Hollywood brownish, where can get separation with the route running. I think,
Sure.
to me, that's a big thing for receivers, because you can be quick, you can have foot speed, but creating separation with superb route running is where it can make a difference.
That's my thing, right? When you talk about it, we look at a lot of things now these days, and we have a ton of film, and we have a bunch of analytics, and we got a lot of numbers that help us predict and project where guys are going to be at the next level. And I think those are extremely valuable. I definitely lean more towards that route. But at the end of the day, football's not rocket science, right? Especially at the receiver position. It's get open, catch ball, score. At the end of the day, that is what it boiled down to. And Noreel White is plenty fast enough. He runs good enough routes, and he catches the ball damn well. And ultimately, that's what you're going to ask him to do. Just let him do it. Don't make it complicated. Just let him do it.
Yeah, I don't think it's too far of a stretch to say I think he'll be a factor in 2024. I think the quickness and just the ability is going to get him on the field in some capacity. I don't know if it's going to be he'll be in the top group. He'll be wide receiver one material. That's not to say not in the future, but I think as a true freshman, I think he will be on the field, whether that's returning punts, returning kicks, or just being a slot guy that can run out there and be a nice change of pace. I fully anticipate him making a difference next year for Ole Miss.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think it's somebody that, we have him on that cusp rated, right? I think we have him, at 89 overall, something like that, 89. I could see a world in which, he continues to produce as a senior, and we vault him into that 4-star territory, especially if he's able to prove that, like, hey, guys, I can win vertically. I can win at all 3 levels of the field. So if he's able to produce and show that he can do that, there's not a world in which Noreel White couldn't be a 4-star when all is said and done.
Let me ask you this before we move on to another commitment Ole Miss is expecting on Saturday.
Sure.
Little peek behind the curtain. I could be completely wrong here, but
all
in
right.
terms of when you evaluate senior tape from guys like a Norell who's right there, does it kind of hurt prospects like him that do everything where you don't get a real prioritized focused look at one position, or is that not really an issue for you?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily an issue. I think it's tough. So I'm trying to think of the best way to answer this. So there's certain players that we have questions and concerns about that senior tape can really, the variable of what their senior tape does can really catapult them to a different world or drop them off a cliff. It depends what we know and what we don't know about a player. So a lot of guys that have athletic measurables that are verifiable and size that we can pinpoint and say, like, yep, we know how big he is. We know athletic he is. The football, we have a generally good idea about, or if we don't have a generally good idea about, the guys that have athletic testing that we know size and have good size, their senior tape could skyrocket them or knock them off a cliff, right? Like, it's the tape is the stuff we aren't sure about those guys. Guys that we know can ball out on the football field on Friday nights, guys that have already great production or elite production, and we don't know the size or don't know the athletic measurables, the senior tape can only do so much, right? Because the things we have concerns about aren't the play. It's not about the football player. It's about how athletic or how big is this guy really to help determine his ceiling. So it kind of varies on prospects, to be honest with you, Zach. It's not a matter of, yep, every kid, the senior tape weighs this amount. It's not quite like that. For each kid, there's different amounts of variables and things that they can show or prove that we either know or don't know that can factor into the equation. It's tough. It's each kid's individual.
And then for him, I think it'll be big for him to, I expect him to get an invite to the Mississippi Alabama game. It remains to be seen if he'll get one for the Under Armour or the All-American Bowl or the Polynesian, whatever. But yeah, those, he's done all the camps. He did OT7. He did a ton of 7-on-7 work.
Right.
But yeah, when you get in that specialized environment going against, best on best, that is where I think a guy like him can really shine and
Yeah.
get a little late boost if that's what he's wanting.
Absolutely. And that's some of the that's what made me excited about Norell and seeing him in person, because I was able to check boxes to say, like, hey guys, this kid can win at the catch point. He can win 50-50 balls. The hands have always been good, but you didn't know how he was in 50-50 situations where he had to give vertical and, get above the rim and play against guys that way. Because there's always kind of this thought process, as I'll be candid, right? For me specifically, where I viewed him as this off-ball Z-type intermediate receiver. That's all he could do, right? He could win between 16 to 8 yards and, do some stuff with the ball in his hands, which is great. But I was always concerned vertically in terms of top end speed and in terms of physicality, 50-50 balls. He checked the 50-50 ball box for me. The only thing that he can't really do unless he goes out and runs a 4.4 flat right now or runs a sub 11 in the 100-meter would be to check the top end speed box. I don't expect his senior season to do that for me. That's just not how it works. But, who's to say if he gets a little more mass in his lowers and he gets a little more explosive, like maybe he adds that tool to his toolbox, but I don't expect that to happen. But I will say I came out of this summer having more boxes checked than I did going into it, which is great.
Another guy that checks the box for you, Trever Jackson, quarterback, Jones High School in Florida.
Yeah.
He really turned some heads at Elite 11 finals in LA. We've talked about him before. He announces on Saturday. I expect Ole Miss to receive good news there.
Yeah.
For me, the word is intrigue. I think there's a ton to like with him. Still a little green at the quarterback position. This is his second year as a starter, and he is splitting time down there at Jones. They've got a little bit of a 2 quarterback system down there, but I do think he can really spin it, and I think the frame lends to growing into a much bigger, more physical dual threat guy than just hey, I can really run and I can whip it around the yard. So I know that you're high on him as well.
Yeah, man, I like the kid, and I really like the fit with Lane Kiffin, to be honest with you. This is a guy that can stretch the field with his arm strength, and like you touched on, he has the athleticism, mobility, and the body type to have a role as a runner for the offense. To me, this is the type of quarterback that defenses absolutely hate playing against. Because if he's on, you're screwed. You're completely out. He can beat you vertically, and he can ground and pound you to death with his legs. Now, he is raw. You're 100% right there. He has some consistency issues when it comes to accuracy. I saw it in person at the Elite 11, but I think a lot of it stems from lower half mechanical issues that are fixable, in my opinion. But it is something to be aware of, right? I think you give him a year or two with Kiffin where he's able to get live reps and he's able to get coaching at that level from someone like Lane Kiffin that can turn him into someone that Ole Miss fans should be excited to see step on the field. To your point, Zach, it's all about consistency. We just need him to clean up some stuff in his lower half mechanically, get his feet aligned with his shoulders and all that good stuff. But the arm talent is real and the athlete is real. You can't coach either of those things, and he has both.
Yeah, that was, I know Charles Power is a big fan of him as well. You use the term RPM. It's used a lot in baseball these days, but you can use it with some signal callers too. He can really, really crank it up and spin it.
Dude, just to touch on that, Zach, I remember because I was there with Charles, obviously at the Elite 11, and so that was my first time going, which was amazing. But dude, the way they had this thing set up, the day one, they have these QBs kind of sit towards the back corner of the end zone, and they have these like cameras set up because they're getting a bunch of data and like video in to see like velocity and sort of like mechanically like the arm angle stuff. And so Charles and I like sprinted to that corner and we're like, are these dudes about to throw like 8 balls apiece at 3 levels of the field and just do it like 4 feet from us? They sure are. So every single QB goes through, that's there, and they go through that station. They make like 8 throws, little short hitch, slant, and like a deep ball over the middle. And so we're standing there, and this is our first time seeing Trever throw in person, right? And so they all kind of go, and he's like middle of the group when it comes to placement or like order. And so he stands there, and I'm telling you, he's throwing like a 7-yard hitch, like an 8-yard hitch route. This dude's like 10 feet from him, basically, is what it feels like. And he rips that SOB, and you could hear the laces pop off his hands. And Charles and I just kind of looked at each other like, all right, so the velocity checks out. Good to know. Like we're in. It turns out we looked at the data. I think he threw the hardest ball in that entire group. Like I think he had the highest velocity or highest RPMs or miles per hour or whatever it was out of the entire group. And you could hear it off the fingertips, which is something that I've only really seen a couple of times in person. But that dude had it. Like, guys, I'm telling you, he's got smoke coming off the laces. Like he can really, really rip it.
Yeah, won the velocity superlative from you guys at Elite 11 finals. Won the rail shot
Charles.
competition.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, it says the breakaway ball score.
Yes,
is what I guess the test.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, he registered the highest score on that. But yeah, I think young for his class. Was his first year as a starter at West Orange. He turned some heads, and then really solidified that 4-star status at Elite 11. But yeah, I do like the fit. And again, I think, the jokes write themselves at this point with Ole Miss and quarterbacks. So how many quarterbacks does Lane Kiffin need? You can chime in on this. You've been in a player personnel seat before, when you're evaluating talent and looking at a depth chart. I mean, Kiffin just operates under the mantra, I assume, if I can get a talented dude, I'm going to take him and we'll figure it out later.
Right. And it's funny, Zach, because I've had that when I was at Texas Tech, we've kind of had this discussion because we had a great room of QBs when I was there at Tech going into the 2022 season with Tyler Shuck, Baron Morton, Donovan Smith. And I'll tell you the same conversation that we had in that personnel office as I would assume they're having in the same personnel office at Ole Miss, which is, hey guys, one of these dudes is leaving. It doesn't matter, right? I mean, at the end of the day, when you take that, especially with the transfer portal now at the position and how much success some guys have had transferring to other schools, it's inevitable. It's inevitable. These guys want to play, and they want to play early. And if they see that little, third string number, or they see that younger cat is getting more reps in practice than they are, like that portal starts screaming a little bit. Yeah. And that's the toughest part. But I will say, from the personnel and like the roster management side of that conversation, it's never a bad deal to have the cream rise to the top, right? Like if you load up your quarterback room with talent, odds are you're going to find the best 2 guys, and it's going to be pretty obvious. Mm-hmm. So yeah, maybe you lose a roster spot or 2 to guys leaving in the portal, but I would bet they feel damn good about the 2 or 3 guys that end up staying because they know they have the right 2 or 3 guys. So yeah, it's tough, dude. It's a weird balance because you want to load up the room with talent, but when you load up a room with talent, the guys that are really, really good that may not make the 2 deep, they're going to look for opportunity elsewhere. That's just part of the gig.
Yeah, it is. And it's better to, burden the hand and all that. You want to have those guys there in your room. Yeah. For me, I think Ole Miss is back on schedule quarterback wise. Mm-hmm. And this is just from a best case scenario, so bear with me here. I think if you're an Ole Miss fan and if you're a staffer in Oxford, you hope Jackson Dart takes that big step like Matt Corral did in year 2 with Kiffin, throws for 3,000 yards, whatever. Ole Miss wins 8 or 9 games, and he takes his chances and goes pro. Then in 2024, it's Walker Howard and Austin Simmons battling it out. Then in 2025. You have a returning starter, and then you've got Trever Jackson, who is acclimated to the speed. He's in the playbook. He's been in the weight room. and you're back, you're on schedule because they
Correct.
were off schedule for a while.
Yep.
And I think that room is kind of lined up nicely for the future.
Yep. The biggest kicker to that, Zach, in my opinion, is the portal. You never know who's going to pop up. You never know if, let's say, for instance, Walker Howard plays and you feel good, right? And the idea would be to have, when Walker Howard's time is done, Austin Simmons and Trever Jackson are the ones that are battling it out for QB1 whenever Walker's done.
Correct.
However, depending on that development, and that's the golden ticket, right? If you knew what Austin Simmons was going to be, or if you knew what Trever Jackson was going to be, you wouldn't have this conversation. But if they develop maybe at not the ideal speed that you're hoping, maybe that's a scenario in which you dig into the portal for a what do they call it? Like the buffer guy, like the buffer quarterback. Maybe you take a guy for a year, kind of like Notre Dame is doing with like Sam Hartman, right? Like,
right.
Sam Hartman's going to come in.
Yeah.
He's going to be the 1 year guy. He's going to play. He's going to start. He's probably going to be pretty good. And then you move on to the next guy.
It's like a gap year.
100%. Like maybe you have a guy that like sits right in between that window, allows Simmons or Jackson to really get another year of development. Then you hope you have a better guy. So it's weird, man. Quarterbacks is a completely different ball game when it comes to timing and development. With the portal in it now, it's a completely different ball game. Changes the way people have to think about the roster.
Yeah. Speaking of a guy that is going to make an impact on your roster, Ole Miss received a commitment from Kamarion Franklin a week ago. Man, you want to talk about a week? It was a doozy. His recruitment took some turns earlier this year, spring into early summer. It was all Tennessee. Miami had a cup of coffee in the lead. He went down to Coral Gables a ton. Really likes Mario Cristobal and that staff. He couldn't rave enough about the people down there. And then Auburn jumped into the picture with Hugh Freeze, that Mississippi tie that he has. Jeremy Garrett, the defensive line coach, played at Ole Miss from Mississippi. So it looked like it was all Tigers. And then I guess like that Wednesday night of his commitment week, things shifted heavily to Pete Golding, Randall Joyner, Kelvin Bolden, and Ole Miss. Ultimately, picks Ole Miss, stays home. He just said that opportunity to represent his home state and for his mother and his grandmother to be right there, to be able to come see him, was just too much to overcome. I guess probably on Kamarion's list of things to overcome is, earning a little bit more keep for him in the rankings department. I know that's difficult and it's hard, and he's as talented as anyone, but I guess just from a pure prospect perspective, what's your evaluation of him? Because I do think he's a bit of a tweener and can grow into a different position. But I do think the position he's at right now, which I do think he's a legit defensive lineman, edge guy with the wingspan and the size. But what's your initial take on him as a rising senior?
Yeah, so he's very interesting. He's a very intriguing guy. So I'll start with body typing, right? Because that's the first thing we're doing, right? First thing you do when you top the tape on, before you even pop tape on, we look at body type, right? And so like you touched on, we had him last verified at 6'5", 265. He's got a 6'5" wing. He's got like a 77.5 wing. So a 6'5" wing, which is average length at the position, right? Like a lot of guys usually have like 4 inches either direction. So pretty good to above average wingspan would be about 2 or 3 inches longer than your height. So he's run of the mill from a wing perspective, length perspective, right? Which is okay. It's just average. 10 hand, which is good size wise. So, I mean, he checks the box as a versatile defensive line weapon. That's how I decided to phrase it. At that size with his frame, he can add weight to kick inside, right? He could kick inside to a 3 technique if they wanted to have him sit closer to like 275. Maybe he could play a 5 technique or a strong side end. Or a 4-eye, which is essentially the end and a 3 down front. But if he maintains his weight and they keep him as an edge, he can stand up or play with his hand in the dirt and can be used as a primary pass rusher from the weak side. His size allows him to be used all sorts of ways. It's going to be
Mm.
all on Ole Miss and P. Golding and how he feels he's best, utilized for that defense. However, to me, the biggest hurdle he has to get over, and it's probably why he's rated lower for us than a lot of the other services, is the hip and ankle stiffness, right? That's the thing that comes up on film consistently, and especially when you watch the game tape. When he's in the open field and he has to change direction and he's forced to redirect, he gets stuck in the mud. It's like getting out of a crowded parking lot with an F-150 compared to like a Prius. It's going to take some more effort, and it's going to be tight. That's the ankle stiffness, right? The hip stiffness is apparent when we talk about pad level at the point of attack and bending the corner. So if he were to project as an edge rusher, right, the hip stiffness isn't as big of an issue when it comes to him, especially if the majority of his work isn't coming off of the weak side as a stand-up rusher. But when he turns the corner and his hips lock up and he isn't able to turn the corner as effectively as you would like, that limits his skill set as a pass rusher. Now, at the point of attack, which is where I think the majority of his work is going to be as an inside guy, I think he's going to be more of a 5 technique. You can tell me if I'm wrong on that. I think he's going to do a lot of his work as like a strong side end, or they beef him up and have him play as like a 3 technique. I'm curious what they do. But when you're at the point of attack and you're 6'5" like he is, it's about getting underneath blockers. When you're 6'5", you have to be able to gain leverage by either shooting your hands first and winning with length, which we touched on isn't great for someone his size, or you have to be able to get low and win the leverage game. You have to. He doesn't have great length. We talked about that. So at the next level, especially if he's playing that 3 tech or 4i or 5 tech or whatever you want to call it, where he's going to be asked to set the edge or hold the point, he's going to have to get low and get underneath blockers with his hips. And get low underneath blockers. Because with his hip stiffness, that's going to be a challenge. Now, with all that being said, right, is he too low for us right now? Probably, right? Like he's into the 220 range. And I've fixated on the areas he can improve, right? But the things he does have is violence, and he has burst off the ball. He's got good hand usage. He plays with a good motor. He is extremely productive at the high school level, right? Like 17 TFLs or what was it, like 17 sacks, 20 something TFLs, or like 40 hurt. It's ridiculous. Like the numbers are ridiculous.
Already broke the school record for sacks.
Correct. Yeah. So he's extremely productive. The stiffness is the thing that holds me back, especially as he potentially adds weight. I'm not sure if he's ever going to be a top 50, top 75 pick for us, in my opinion. But is he maybe closer to a day 2 guy than a day 3 guy like we have him currently? Perhaps. But I still think the sweet spot that he can land when all's said and done for us is probably in that 150 to like 200 range. He'll need to show some improvement in his movement skills in order to make that jump, but it's definitely possible. Like he's D-line 21 for us right now. I could see him potentially reaching D-line 15, but that's only if he shows some improvement in those areas.
Yeah, his coach, his head coach at Lake Cormorant talks a lot about his motor, and I think that that's big when you look at tape, and you probably think the same. What do you do when the play goes away from you? What do you do? Maybe you take a bad step, you take a poor step, you get blocked initially. What are you doing after that? His coach raved about him as a guy that big in pursuit and being a leader. But yeah, I think talk about, we said the same thing with Norrell, where you're just the best player on the field, so you just make plays. I think with Kamarion Franklin, it's kind of similar, where he's going to be the biggest guy. He's going to be able to physically dominate and just make plays. And that's a lot of high school defensive linemen. I mean, come on. Like, they're not all technically sound when they're 16, 17 years old. And that's what getting to college, and that's what Randall Joyner is going to do. But yeah, I mean, get a little bit lower, use the lower half a little better, and he's going to be just fine.
Right. And that's the thing too, right? When we talk about projecting, for us, we're going to the draft, right? Like we're projecting the NFL draft.
Yeah.
None of those guys move poorly. There's none, zero that move in the NFL poorly. So, and I'm not saying it's pour from Kamarion. There's a reason. And like, that's kind of what I touched on before we even talked about this, right, Zach? Like when you hit me up the other day about doing this, it's one of those deals where this kid's ranked as a draft pick. Like we still have him slated to be a draft pick. Is it a day 2 guy or top 3 round guy? Not right now. It's not. And I don't know if it will be necessarily, but he's still going to be a very good player for Ole Miss. Like,
yeah,
you will take an entire team of draft picks if you're any team in the country, to be honest with you. Anybody in the country is taking a team full of like 4th, 5th, and 6th rounders because those guys are special. And when you look at the wide world of college football, like guys that are getting selected on draft day are freak humans. And he has some of those tools in his bag to be that guy. I just don't see a player with his hip stiffness and ankle stiffness that equates to a top 100, top 150 selection at this point, right? But there's who's to say if he's able to develop that and loosen up and do some like Pilates or ballet or something like that just to get the hips and the ankles loose, man, that's all he needs right now.
start doing some hot yoga with Kiffin.
I'm telling you, man, that's real. Like I will say, like Corey Raymond at LSU taught me that, which was actually kind of crazy. Like I had never met someone that believed that you can teach hip flexion. Like you can actually loosen guys up. He's like, because he'd had a great analogy. Like when we were talking about players, we talk about corners, and this still translates to D-line, right? Because hip stiffness is hip stiffness. It's just corners have to flip their hips like nonstop. So we were talking to Corey and we talked about this kid and we're like, oh, he's tight. I don't know if he's gonna be able to flip his hips. And he said, do you think black belts just started with the most loose hips of all time? And we're like, what? And he was like, do you think these guys that are like martial arts, like black belts, absolute freak show, movers just were born that way? And we're like, well, no. And he's like, you just have to train it. That's all it is. And it's tough because a lot of these high school kids, especially track and field guys, it's about explosion. A lot of it's about bursts and explosion and power. And especially with these bigger guys, like it's the same deal. They're doing a bunch of squat stuff. They're doing a bunch of bench press, a lot of stuff and weights that are stiffening up their muscles. But when they snap and pop, that's when they show off. But when it comes to looseness and pliability and flexibility, a lot of guys aren't working those muscles. So you have a bunch of dudes that are strong as hell and have get off and explosion. But boy, when you ask them to change direction or start steering a little bit, they get a little tight. And that's something that he can work on. He just got to do it sooner rather than later, in my opinion.
I'll give you a comp here and you'll like this. And a little bit of a tie-in to Pete Golding.
Okay.
Reminds me a lot of Marcus Davenport. And I do think he was a little bit slim when he was at UTSA. For sure.
Absolutely.
And then he grew into a monster.
Right.
What he is now in the NFL, which I do think that there is room in the frame for Franklin to add. And like you said, he could grow into that. But yeah, I do like the comp there of like a guy that has, good to pretty good length and is pretty violent. And if he can learn to just move laterally a little better, train those hips, coach those hips up, I think that he could be a difference maker for Ole Miss. And the good news is he's going to arrive to campus early and he'll get in the lab with Randall Joyner and Pete Golding pretty quick.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing is, man, like, the thing he is able to do is win in a straight line. There's zero question about that. If you had him on a rail system, he would smoke you because he is violent and he has great hand usage. Like he really does use his hands effectively. And he has power. And when it comes to pure power play, he has it. You just hope at the next level he continues to develop because he has to be an elite hands guy. With his lack of length, he has to be an elite hand guy. So, because if you're matched up with someone that is at the same level of you, when in terms of hand usage, the longer guy wins. That's just science. Like that's just numbers, right? Like the guy with the longer arms is going to touch you first. That's the game.
Yeah.
So if he's able to develop good hand swipes and is able to keep his chest clean, that's what we call it, keeping your chest clean. When you're able to get blockers' hands off of you, it's just about keeping your chest clean. Because once you have leverage here and you're able to get underneath guys and get your hands here, the game's over. It doesn't matter if you're 150 or 350. If you get your hands on somebody right here in their shoulders, you can do whatever you want with them. You can move them all over the place. So for him, it's about getting to that point despite his lack of length and being able to maneuver and dip and get underneath guys to keep that chest surface out of the way. Anything he can do to make this target smaller will help him exponentially.
Yeah. I'm excited to see him this year. I'll be down there in Lake Cormorant to see him in person live. Have yet to do so. So I'm excited. I've only seen film, obviously. But yeah, get down there, see him. And then Ole Miss expecting Trever Jackson Saturday. And then big get for them getting Noreel White finally today. Right now, do a quick effort here. I believe Ole Miss is now 22nd in the team rankings. I expect that number to, I guess for the sake of this exercise, to go down when they land Trever Jackson. And that would be quite the week for Ole Miss, landing 3 4-star guys, 2 on the offensive side, and then a cornerstone guy like Kamarion Franklin for the future. So big week for Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss as they head into their opener against Mercer. And yeah, big shout out to our boy Cody for joining us. Fun as always. Again, remember, home field apparel. The drop is on Saturday. Use promo code TOC23. You can see Cody's got the Minor Magic on right now. I've got a Kansas shirt on as we speak. So go get you some tees, get you a quarter zip, get you a sweatshirt, whatever you need. TOC23 is the promo code. Put that in before checkout. 15% off your first order. And it's I've seen the collection. It's some straight heat, as the kids would say. So
is that what the
always
youths are calling it these days?
The
heat, straight
youths,
heat, that drip.
Home field's
like
in their bag, I guess you would say. Or oh no, the new one now is when the collection comes out, the youths will say, "Oh, home field ate on that one."
Oh my god,
they ate on that one. This is what covering recruiting does. You stay up.
Phenomenal.
You stay up to date on the lingo.
I'm out the game, man. Like, I'm not hanging out with these kids like I used to on visits. So I'm learning through you. So I appreciate you giving me that. Like, now I can add that to the notes.
My favorite is, and it's making a comeback, like 90s fashions making a comeback, early 2000s. Everything is cyclical. Kids now are saying dead ass more. Have you heard that? Do you remember saying that?
I didn't say dead ass a lot.
You never say
I feel like I wasn't a big dead ass guy. I was always sort of someone that described things as rad, and people were like, "Do people say that?" And I was like, "No, not really." But I feel like it really describes how I felt about a lot of things at the time. So rad was big for me. Dope was big for me. I was a big dope guy. Things are dope, but dead ass was never in the lexicon for me. It just wasn't in the rotation.
I remember we said that all the time in high school. Maybe it's a geographical thing, because I actually saw a video this morning of somebody describing what junt means. Did you ever use junt?
No, okay. That's not in our territory, but I know what. Yeah. I hear you.
So we cover everything here on Not Committed. So again, thanks to Cody for jumping on and talking some recruiting, and we'll be back with you next week with more podcasts. We've got Hit That Line Out. We've got week 0 locks and an SEC West preview. Heavy on the Ole Miss, obviously, but we take it's a concerted effort to objectively preview the division. And I think we all kind of came to the conclusion that it's kind of LSU's to lose this year. So we talk a lot about LSU. We try to answer the questions that Alabama's facing heading into this season. And then, of course, we deep dive into Ole Miss and their brutal schedule, but I'm pretty optimistic. So you can find all of that on the Talk of Champions podcast network and the rest of it on omspirit.com, an affiliate of On3. So for Cody over there, I'm Zach. If you were watching us on YouTube, we appreciate it. Subscribe, smash that like button, as the kids would say. Yeah. Put the, hit the bell.
It's somewhere down there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hit this, hit the subscribe, follow Zach on Twitter, all that good stuff.
Yeah. So we'll have more from Cody as the cycle rolls on. But until next time, we appreciate y'all. We out of here.